started out from the flying outside the Bollywood industry. That was my second objective. So I started off with video effects. I worked in a lot of big movies. I worked in Lion King, the remake, Jumbo. I really thought that was mine. And The Predator. So that's where my origin was. And then I was motivated to try and do something for back home the continent. And that's why I decided to form Kigali, my two co-founders, so me and then LSE, who are from Nigeria and from Uganda. So that's kind of like how I got into the game. It was what I studied in uni, and then in the VFX side, and then we started doing African stories. Just as a result, we were compelled and we saw the opportunity. So we saw the opportunity of developing the continent, and we saw the opportunity of what can be if we are successful. I would say I'll go positive, negative, positive, right? Just like an order there. So the positive side of the industry back home, because we have such a young economy and like a very young base, we have the youngest population in the world at the moment, Africa. That allows us to explore the creative areas a bit more differently, and there's a lot more people exploring it. And I think that's a very good thing, in that the more people exploring it, the more people can explore different things. So there's that innate creativity and difference that come from the scale we have of young people. That's the positive bit. On the negative side, there's a disconnect where the only industry creatively where there's a separation between the diaspora and the people on the land they came from. So there's no disconnect between the Asian, for example, let's go Bollywood, and then you look at in Britain or in North America, Bollywood is all joined together, whereas when it comes to the general African or black industry, there is about 3 different separations there. And matter of fact, that's actually one of the big strengths of Iwáju. We know how to build the bridges between. So it's a negative, but again, as an entrepreneur, problems are where money is. In other words, we make money by solving. So every problem we see is possible of having internet. The first one would be, I'll start with what I know, right? So we have the general creative industry, and that's because that is what drives what people think about themselves. In other words, you could have all the resources, you can have the best doctors and everything like that, but if they don't believe they can do it, if they don't believe in themselves, you're going to have a huge issue. In other words, if people don't like themselves, a lot of disruptive things come up, and it's usually the responsibility of the creative industry, the storytelling industry, to frame how we see ourselves. I know we have the quote of stories shape our society, let's shape our stories, and we can clearly see that, for example, with the explosion of Afrobeats around the world has allowed a lot of people to be more comfortable to identify with who they are as African. Because no earlier people talking about people learning about African history. I'm sure Burna Boy had a bigger effect on African history being learned than most education platforms, because people look at that, they identify with that, they're like, I want to learn about myself back home. That's a bigger drive. So the drive coming from inside is always better than the drive outside, and the only way to communicate to people effectively to the way that hits their emotions is through stories and through the creative industry. So that'll be the first one, because if you're not setting your mind in the right way, everything else you do is going to fall short in some fashion. So that'll be the first one. The next one, I'll probably find a way to, I think it'd be attractive but additive. I'd find a way to remove the obstacles people are experiencing. Some of the biggest ones is just finding a way to unify the informal and formal economies in the continent. If we can do that, I think just that action there, again, an opportunity for business there, somebody else should take that up. That should create a massive amount of impact, and that's hard to do without money. Money lubricates a lot of things. So if I had infinite money, I would just lubricate that as best as I can to just join the two forms of the economy. There's a saying which I hate, which is everything that happens around the world, give it 2 years, it will happen in Africa. I hate that. I think it used to be true back in the day, just because, again, we are coming off a whole tremendous time, right? That used to be true then, but I don't think it's true anymore. I think I would like to thank the internet for that and social media for that as well. Where most people on the continent right now see what's happening around the world real time, and we can move with what is most effective for us in that fashion. So we can greatly see a change with the people who grew up with social media in their hands today. And we can know, as we know, the explosion of internet and mobile phone usage in Africa, it's been absolutely insane. Year per year, it's an exponential growth. I think that over there has solved that misconception, but people still have it in their minds. In other words, if you describe what Africa is to a lot of people who have never been there, it's not what they imagine Africa to be. I'm a very optimistic person. I like to dream big. I see we're trying to kind of come together as different African countries. I think that's something we'll definitely get right. If we fail to get that right, to be fair, it's a political class, so maybe that's some. But I think they'll crack it. I think they'll crack a way where it's easier to move inside Africa than to move outside of Africa. Just as an example, I have both a British passport and a Uganda passport. To get into South Africa, I have to use the British passport. It's much easier. I don't have to do visas. Whereas Uganda is right there, I can't do that, right? And there's that going on in different African countries. Even just flying from one African country to another, sometimes you have to fly out to Dubai to fly back into Africa, which seems crazy, right? So I think those will get fixed, and I can see parts of those getting fixed. And I think that will greatly improve trade between Africa and general exchange of ideas between African countries.